Hey, real quick before we get into this one, Top Choice Gaming and the People's Card Shop are doing an OP09 case tournament online on December 28th. I'm going to be doing the commentary for it, and I should have the breakdown afterwards as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. If you guys haven't checked it out already, make sure to do so. Link in the description, and enjoy the video. Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 32 breakdown for the Booster Boxes Online Treasure Cup from this past weekend. Over 900 players and 10 rounds of Swiss to this top 32 that we see here today. And a couple of things before we get started. First, I'm pretty sick right now. I'm sorry about my voice not being 100%, but this is the first English OP09 event, so I definitely want to go over it, and I do apologize again for that. But also, shouts to the Booster Box for letting myself and Strongest Wizard do the commentary and live stream for it as well. This was a lot of fun. I know that you guys wanted coverage for this event, and I'm really happy that it worked out. So you can make sure to find it on their YouTube, which is linked in the description, as well as on this page, which this page is also linked in the description too. And we're going to be covering a lot of OP09 here on Eggman Events too, so make sure to check out the page if you haven't already. So again, thank you to Booster Box. Make sure to go over to their YouTube, hit that subscribe while you're over there, and let's just jump on into this. So we did have 941 players, 10 rounds of Swiss. This was yesterday, and again, here's the live stream. And of the top 32, we did have 13 copies of Doflamingo, 9 copies of OP05-Luffy, so the purple one, 3 Shanks with one of them winning the event, 2 copies of Sardec 13 Luffy, 2 Rob Lucci, 2 Smoker, and 1 copy of Jewelry Bonney. So a good amount of variety, but one big thing to notice, getting like a third of the top 32 is pretty impressive for Doflamingo. I think most people thought it was the best deck in the format, and it was the most present, and it was the most in the top 32. But there's no copy of Teach in this top 32, which I think is really interesting. I do know that it has a bit of a rough matchup into Doflamingo and Purple Luffy, so with both those decks being so present, I think that's something that impacts it. Shanks also is like a 50-50 matchup, I think, for Teach from my own testing, and because of that, no Teach in this, even though like a lot of people, including myself, thought it was a bit of a boogeyman. I didn't think it was the best deck in the format, but I am like expecting it to at least top the first big event that we did have for this format. So I thought that was really surprising, and I hope you guys think so too. I think it's something that a lot of people just thought it was going to be a presence in this, and not being so, I thought was really interesting. But of the leaders, we did have 231 Dofi, 143 Shanks, 142 of the Purple Luffy, 79 Teach, 65 Lucci, 33 Enel, 31 Bonney, 25 Nami, and then 25, 22, 21 of the Sardec 13, Sardec 10, and OP09 Luffys respectively. Man, there are so many Luffy leaders that are viable in this meta right now. It is a little bit obnoxious for it. But we are going to go into the top placing list for each one of these leaders, starting off with our first place list, which is Mangley's version of Shanks. And this is a bit of an interesting version of this. Most people I've been seeing have been more of like the Red Hawk version of the build, but this is a little bit different from that one. We are playing quite a few cards that don't have counters, so we do have 19 of them, and we have a bit of an interesting top end. We do have 4 of the 7-cost Newgate, where I don't think that this card was on my radar much. I did test it quite a bit when we started the meta, especially since I was trying to go from Marco to this deck, and I just found like this card wasn't as worth it as much. But it did get, I do think it helps you in your Doflamingo matchup specifically. The fact that you're able to get rid of a 4-cost pretty much every turn, as long as it's a 5k, is really great. And or if you have the 10-cost Shanks out, it means that you can get rid of a 6k because it does get the minus. So because of that, I do think like the removal for this is good, and this is something that can help you in more of a Doflamingo matchup. Ben Beckman is obviously really good, but it only gets rid of one thing every turn. The fact that Newgate gets rid of one thing the turn it's played, Newgate getting rid of one thing every turn, I think is really huge as well. So we do have a lot of searchers with the Uta, 4 copies of this, and also 2 copies of Come On Will Fight With You. So looking for a Red Hair Pirates on the top 5 is really just getting that consistency as much as you can, which I have like the biggest issue with this deck is that like I don't see when I'm at 10 Dawn, I want to find a 10-cost Shanks, whether it's the new one or the old one, and not being able to do that really hurts a lot. But I do also have a bit of an issue like trying, like when I tested this, being able to look for all these Red Hair Pirates that are good for like the beginning game and like finding 1 copies of this, but then there's just all of this other late game stuff like Newgate, Silvers, as well as Dragon, like all these cards not being able to use these to, like we just bottom deck these off our searchers, which is a little bit rough there. But I do think that this deck is I think Shanks Shanks was really strong in general. I'm not surprised that it topped. A little bit surprised that it won the whole thing, but I think Mangley did a really good job for this one, and it's going to be interesting to see how Shanks develops for the rest of this meta. But this is Mangley's version. Congratulations for their first place with Shanks. And then next up, we've got Bonney. So this is Min's boyfriend's version of Jewelry Bonney, and I think a lot of people kind of I don't know. Bonney, I think, is just present in this meta still. It's a deck that you have to play really particularly, and it's a little bit tough to adjust to some matchups at times, but it is something that I think can have a good Doflamingo matchup. Purple Luffy, I think, can be a little bit rough at times since it is, they play so many big bodies on the board, but the fact that we're able to like stun them with like Carrot, there's so many 7 cost or lower that happens in like Doflamingo and Purple Luffy that this is really great, especially like a Luffy Taro. Preventing that from attacking anymore is really good with a Carrot on the board. Being able to find 10-drop Dofi. We are playing both the Baby 5 and the Jewelry Bonney top 5s, which these are a little bit atypical. I think at this point of the time, most people kind of went to one or the other. So most Bonney topping lists haven't been running both, but this one did, and I think it was really good for it. That does mean that we're also playing like some more Supernova cards, like we're playing the Beige. No copies of 4-drop Eau Rouge, which most people I've been seeing have kind of been off that card in the first place. Some Rosinantes too, which is really nice, and then also the Eustace Kid, which I think against Doflamingo, most people aren't playing with the copies of like Red Rock. From what I've seen, there are some that did, and you can look at some of the Dofi list, but the fact that this is a good wall against those decks. Purple Luffy too doesn't really have like a lot of removal for this outside of just straight attacking, and because of that, I think 8-drop Kid can be very good. And then Shanks is still just fantastic. This card hits the board a lot, gets a guaranteed removal against most decks, and then also the fact that it's a 9-drop 11k, it just gets so much value in this deck. So this has been a really strong card for it in general. But I think this is an interesting build for it. We're only playing like 1 copy of Basil. We're having like 3 copies of Bonney. We have 2 Carrots, which is just like a card. I think I don't really know why this is put in the deck over others, but my guess is it's something that you can play, and then you can play it in like something like if Teach is around, you can use it, so you can play the card for 5. You have 5 Dawn on something else, and you can end it and get the 1 Dawn back, which is kind of strong. But then also, if you need to go like wider on the board and still have like a Dawn open, you can still use this Carrot to get that done. So that's my assumption. If that's wrong, let me know. But I think this is a good deck. I think Bonney's still going to be present. It usually gets like 1 or 2 tops like every event, and getting 2nd place I think is a huge accomplishment. So congratulations to Min's boyfriend for their finish with Bonney. And then next up we got Doflamingo. So this is Fibo's version of the deck, and this is really close to the build that I've been seeing around in the sense like on TCG matchmaking's meta report. We did have this is like 2 cards difference, right? I think the big difference is that we added 1 Perona and 1 copy of Sengoku instead of the 4-drop Gekko Moria. I think that's the biggest difference between those. This deck is really understood. It's more a little bit of gameplay style than necessarily how good you are at like deck building. I think the deck build is like a little bit of a difference, but it's more of a player centric deck, right? There's a little bit of RNG of like how good your start is, like what's the best 5 cards in hand and then top 5 off of like a Perona or top 3 off the Buggy. But if you're able to get control by or just like presence by playing the Jajimbe and also the Weevil, that's very good. Boa Hancock's still been great. And then I think most people jump up to 2 copies of Perfume. Most people were kind of at like 1 copy previously, but jumping to 2 just means you get to see it a little bit more often. And there are a lot of decks that just put up a blocker and pray, and so being able to get around that with Perfume is very, very strong in its own way. So our only like removal is Gravity Blade permanently, which is good against a lot of decks. I think 5s and 6s are very common right now for most decks to be playing out. So this game, that removal is very strong, but still no Red Rock, which I think is fine though. If I was playing this deck, I'd probably be playing it at like 1 copy just in case there's something I need like removed on the higher end. But again, I do think this Doflamingo is strong. You're going to see like a dozen other variants too if you guys want to check it out. I think this deck is very known for what kind of are the good cards for it, and you just kind of use your own ratios from there. But this is Fibo's version of the deck, and congratulations for their top 4 with Doflamingo. And we also have Daddy's version of OP05 Purple Luffy, which this deck was really present for this event, which I don't think should be surprising anyone. It's gotten us a lot of incremental support from OP08. Adding the Charlotte Linlin at 2 copies is just a really good card for getting into the late game and staying alive, which is very strong. In the new Star decks, we got the Luffy Taro, which is just very good at being able to put out cards on the board. such as like your Songoro and your Zorojuro. We're also playing the vanilla Usopp, which I haven't seen this be played in a lot of decks, but it does make sense. It's just like a backup card that's a 4-drop 6K. That's also purple Straw Hat. You can play off your Luffy Taro. I don't think it's a bad pick at all. It's just a surprising pick I haven't really seen at all. So that's really interesting to see it at the top end there. We do also have like some additional ramp cards and like the Bond Clay. We have like the one Trafalgar Law. We have the 1-drop Trafalgar Law. This card is fantastic for us. Being able to find any Straw Hats that just isn't like pretty much a Gum Gum Giant is really great for us. And talking about Gum Gum Giant, this card is just amazing for the deck. It just means like late game, like we aren't like afraid of like losing as long as we keep a Dawn up and we can keep it like a healthy life total, and we don't even like lose hand advantage, which is really good for a card like this. So then lastly, we do have the 9-drop Monkey.D.Luffy. This one's pretty good too. If you're playing against Teach, it's a little bit rough because you don't get anything on the on play, but the fact that it's a 9-drop 10K, that it gets immediately rush, and you also get to draw a card. There's a lot of situations where you just ramp up to this, you play it as soon as often, and then because of that, you're able to just get a 10K attack every turn. And there's like some of these like power levels, right? So if you're 10K, it just means like if they have like a Gecko Moria, they can't pressure this without investing any Dawn, which is really strong too. But I think this deck is really good. I think Purple Luffy's going to be very present as well. Last card is like Sanji. This gets us like some wins as time too. Sometimes you just want to ramp into this. It's our like a backup 7-drop play if we don't have Luffy Taro, and I think that's very strong as well. So this is the build here. Congratulations to Daddy for their Purple Luffy. You guys can make sure to check out a bunch of other Purple Luffy builds as well. And the next up, we've got Stardeck 13 Luffy. So this is Max version of the deck. And I know a lot of people kind of write off this leader going into OP9, mostly with a bit of fear about how present Teach could be, but I think that this deck is still going to be present. I don't know if it's going to be as present as it was in like the end of OP08, but it's still a really strong deck that does have a good amount of matchups. I think Doflamingo, you have a pretty average, positive matchup against that. Purple Luffy is a bit tough because they are very fast against you. But I do think this is a deck that can survive in this meta, right? We had 2 in the top 32, despite only like 20 people running it, which I think already is just kind of a sign that this deck is still present in a lot of ways. So some adjustments that we've made for this meta are mostly just running the Raigo. This is just a great way for getting removal on anything. There are like a lot of like late game targets of cards. No one's really playing like 9-drop Zora anymore, but in case that's around, that's something. Also getting rid of like a 10-drop Shanks, or getting rid of like a Luffy Taro, or anything that's just like a 9K. This can get like rid of a Gecko Moria, and then you can still go down like to 1. Generally, you want to get down to 1, or you are at 1 or less anyways. So this card really doesn't have a cost, which is great. And then you're able to do the rest of your effects as well. So I think that's very strong for the deck. We have 3 Kuzans. The Nami's been, I think, pretty present since pretty much like mid OP08, where this was kind of discovered as a tech that was good for the deck. So you can play this off Moria, and then you can use it with like a 2-drop Sabo. You can be a 7K leader, you draw 1 off the Nami, and then have the Sabo protect the Nami and the Sabo. So I think that's very good. I think the only big issue with this deck right now is that the 5-drop Sabo is not as like bulletproof as it used to be. There are a lot of decks that have ways to interact with it. Just the fact that like purple in general has ways to get the removal by just resting it, right? Blue has ways to like bottom deck it too. So which, not like getting rid of it is one thing, but putting it to the bottom of the deck means it's not in rotation anymore. It's kind of like the bigger deal. So it really just depends on how many you see of these, and you just have to be really present because there are a lot of cards that can interact with this card, which makes it hard for you to do anything. Another card is like Goldie Roger. You can never go down to 0 life against something like Shanks, because if they play that card, they just win because of that too. So I think that's something that's important. I think this deck is still going to be present, but you do still have to adapt to this meta. But if you do, you will get rewarded for it, just like Mac did with their top 32 finish. So congratulations to their finish there. All right, and then going into our X2s, we got Andyroo with their copy of Rob Lucci. I still think this deck is very strong. I think it's probably not tier 1 necessarily, but I do think it's something that it is very present. I think also if Teach isn't going to be really around as much as people thought it was at the beginning of this meta, this is something that you can still get a lot of value from it. So one big tech choice that I saw though is the Uta from Stardeck 8. This is a way, I believe, to get around the teach effect, so you still get the reduction with this. This card cannot be KO'd in battle by leaders and then activate main. You may rest this character, give it to one of your opponent's characters -2 cost during this turn. It's also has this weird protection effect too, so there are some situations where your opponent really can't get rid of this easily, and because of that, you're able to keep using the effect too. So it's kind of like a worse Ennis Lobby, but it's still pretty strong because Ennis Lobby was pretty strong when we were able to play it, and I do like the tech add for it there. Other than that, we do just have some standard cards for the deck. We do have the Monkey.D.Luffy zombie one, which is able to get some good removal for us too. I am surprised we're not playing any copies of the 9-drop Kaido. That's a card in the deck that I think is worth a spot R2, but we do have the Jack, which is able to still get some good removal. We're playing Gecko Moria, obviously. Only one copy of Sabo, which is a little bit surprising, but again, I don't think this card is as bulletproof in this meta as it used to be. Most people have ways to interact, at least most meta decks have ways to interact with this card outside of KOing it, which is really strong. The fact that I didn't even mention it, Ben Beckman, you can just, it doesn't matter that this doesn't KO, right? This card just puts it into the trash, which is really important for us. So because of that, I think that's fine. I think Rebecca's just is the better card to get value with it. Even if they interact with it, they still have to spend the Dawn to do that. And I think that's fine for what it is. But we do have a good amount of cost reduction, 4 Tempest Kick, 4 Ice Age, 2 copies of Soap Sheep as well. So we really want to do well against the Doflamingo players, and the rest of the deck is here. But I think Rob Lucci's still good. I think it was just too powerful of a deck. The removal for it is really unparalleled in this game still, and it's still going to be present in this meta. So this is Andyroo's version of the deck. Congratulations for their top 16. And then lastly, we do have Insult's version of Smoker. And Smoker had such a good conversion rate of this in this tournament. The fact that we were there's less than 20 people on the deck, right? There's not a lot of people on it, but 2 of them were able to get into the top 32. This is Insult's version of it, and this is something that I feel like if you were scared about Teach, we have a lot of these activate main removals that do get around it. We do have the Kaido, as mentioned earlier, that I still think that you probably want to put a copy in specifically Rob Lucci, but this is still a very good card, I think, in general. Being able to get that removal, get a discard in some decks is really impactful. We are playing some Kuzons, we are playing a good amount of the Navy stuff. The Sengoku still is such a fantastic card for consistency in this deck. Drawing 3 is a lot in this card game, and most of the Navy cards in our hand, we are okay with them being in our trash because we get to get them back later. Cards like Hina with Rebecca is very strong. Cards like Kobe, even if it's a 2K, just means a Rebecca can get the 2K back. It just means we're getting closer to our Moria as well. So this one is definitely more of a tempo deck, right? Being able to play Toshigi on curve is really strong for us. We're not playing any copies of Jack, which is a little bit surprising, but I do understand why that might not be the case for it too. We also are playing 1 copy of Rob Lucci, which definitely, if I remember correctly, this did save you in a matchup where you are playing as Purple Luffy. This got a really good removal, a double removal with some Ice Age and some additional cost reduction off of Hina. So I think that's very strong. I'd be really tempted to play 2 copies of Lucci, but obviously 1 is good enough. And then Brook is still one of the best removal cards in this game right now. It's obnoxious about how strong it is in general at times, and in some of these cost reduction decks as well. But that's the build here. This is Insult's version of Smoker, and congratulations for their finish there. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I do apologize. My voice is not 100%. I am quite sick right now, but I did want to make sure you guys got this content. And then also make sure to check out the booster box. Once again, check out their live stream. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe over there. I do want to support them as well. I do appreciate them letting Sos and I do these live stream for them. So that's going to be it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.